I still remember the exact moment I realized something was very, very wrong. I was standing in the middle of a 5-star restaurant, dressed in my best clothes, holding a small gift for my mother, when a hostess smiled politely and pointed me toward the children's table. Not joking, not exaggerating. The literal kids' table. Meanwhile, my siblings, all younger than me, were already seated at a long, elegant table with the adults, laughing, clinking glasses, and being treated like royalty. I felt my face burn with embarrassment and confusion, and all I could think was this some kind of cruel joke, or was my own family really trying to put me in my place? Was I wrong to feel humiliated, or would you have felt the same way if this happened to you? Let me rewind, because this didn't come out of nowhere, even though it felt like a slap to the face in the moment. I'm the eldest child in my family. Growing up, that title came with expectations, responsibilities, and a constant pressure to set an example. From as early as I can remember, I was told to sacrifice, to be patient, to understand, because I was the mature one. If there was one piece of cake left, it went to my younger siblings. If someone needed help with homework, it was automatically my job. If there was a family problem, I was expected to stay quiet and not add to the stress. I didn't complain much back then, because I thought that was just what being the oldest meant. I thought one day it would pay off, that I'd be respected, appreciated, maybe even celebrated for always being the responsible one. My siblings, on the other hand, had a very different experience growing up. There's my brother, 2 years younger than me, who was always praised for the bare minimum. If he cleaned his room once a month, he was treated like a hero. Then there's my sister, the baby of the family, who could do no wrong in my parents' eyes. She was funny, charming, and everyone's favorite. I love them, I really do, but there was always this unspoken hierarchy where their feelings mattered more than mine. I was expected to understand, always understand. As we got older, that dynamic never really changed. When I moved out for college, I did it on my own. I worked part-time jobs, took out loans, and learned very quickly how to survive without a safety net. My parents were supportive in words, but financially and emotionally, I was mostly on my own. Meanwhile, when my siblings went to college, my parents helped them with tuition, rent, and even groceries. I told myself not to be bitter. I told myself every family is different, and maybe they just had more resources by then. Still, a small part of me felt invisible. Fast forward to the present. I'm in my late 20s now, working a stable job, living independently, and trying to maintain some kind of relationship with my family despite everything. A few weeks before the incident, my mom called me, sounding unusually excited. She told me they were planning a special family dinner at a very fancy restaurant to celebrate my dad's promotion and my sister's recent engagement. She emphasized how important it was that everyone be there, how this was a big deal, and how she really wanted the whole family together. I hesitated for a moment, because I don't exactly love formal family events, but I agreed. Part of me hoped, maybe foolishly, that this dinner would be different. Maybe this time, I'd feel like an equal. I went all out to prepare. I bought a new outfit, something classy but understated. I even picked up a thoughtful gift for my parents, a small framed photo from a family vacation years ago, when things felt simpler. I arrived at the restaurant early, nerves buzzing in my chest. This place was expensive, crystal chandeliers, white tablecloths, waiters in suits. I felt slightly out of place but also proud of myself for being there. For once, I thought, maybe I belong at this table. When my family arrived, things seemed normal at first. Hugs, small talk, compliments on my outfit. My mom told me I looked nice, which, coming from her, is about as enthusiastic as it gets. The hostess approached and asked for our reservation. My dad gave his name, and she nodded, leading us deeper into the restaurant. As we walked, I noticed a long table set up beautifully, clearly meant for adults. Wine glasses, elegant place cards, the works. I assumed we were all sitting there together. That's when the hostess stopped and turned to me with a polite smile and said, "And for you, we have a seat over here." She gestured to a smaller table nearby, decorated with coloring books, crayons, and kid-sized chairs. At first, I genuinely thought she was mistaken. I laughed awkwardly and said, "Oh, I'm with them," pointing to my family. She looked confused and then checked her list again. "Yes," she said slowly. "This is what we were told." I looked at my parents, expecting them to correct her, to laugh it off, to say there'd been some misunderstanding. Instead, my mom avoided eye contact. My dad cleared his throat. My siblings exchanged glances and my sister actually smirked. That's when it hit me. This wasn't a mistake. This was intentional. I asked, quietly but firmly, "What is this?" My mom finally looked at me and said, "Oh, don't make a big deal out of it. We just thought it would be better this way." Better for who? I wanted to scream. She went on to explain that the adult table was very formal, with serious conversations and important guests, and that I'd probably be more comfortable at the other table. At the kids' table, me, a grown adult with a full-time job and my own life. I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. People around us were staring. I could feel the heat rising in my face, the embarrassment, the anger, the sadness all mixing together. I asked again, louder this time, "Why am I not sitting with everyone else?" My dad shrugged and said, "Let's not cause a scene. It's just a seat. Just a seat." That phrase echoed in my head as I stood there, frozen. My siblings were already being seated at the adult table, laughing and chatting like nothing was wrong. No one stood up for me. No one questioned it. It was like this was completely normal to them. I sat down at the children's table because, honestly, I didn't know what else to do in that moment. I felt small. Smaller than I had in years. The table was surrounded by actual children from other families, coloring and playing with toys. A waiter brought me a kid's menu without even asking. Chicken nuggets, mac and cheese. I stared at it, my hands shaking slightly, and felt tears prick my eyes. I forced myself to blink them back. I wasn't going to cry in the middle of a restaurant. As the dinner went on, I could hear laughter and conversation from the adult table. Toasts were made. Glasses clinked. My sister stood up at one point to announce her engagement, and everyone applauded. I clapped too, from my little table, feeling like an outsider watching my own family through a glass wall. No one came over to check on me. No one asked if I was okay. It was like I didn't exist. At some point, my brother walked over, grabbed a crayon from the table, and jokingly said, "Wow, this suits you." He laughed and went back to his seat. I don't think he realized how deeply that hurt, or maybe he did and just didn't care. Either way, that was the moment something inside me shifted. All the years of swallowing my feelings, of being the understanding one, of telling myself it wasn't a big deal, came crashing down. I barely remember what I ate. I remember the noise, the lights, the feeling of being trapped in my own head. I kept asking myself, why am I here? Why did I agree to this? Why do I keep letting them treat me like I'm less than everyone else? By the time dessert was served at the adult table, I knew I couldn't take it anymore. I stood up, quietly at first, and walked toward my parents. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. I told them I needed to talk. My mom sighed like I was inconveniencing her. My dad looked annoyed. We stepped a few feet away, and I asked them, one last time, to explain why they thought this was okay. My mom said something about tradition, about how the seating was symbolic, about how I was too sensitive. My dad added that I should be grateful to even be invited. That word, grateful, was the final straw. I felt a wave of anger and clarity wash over me. I realized that no matter what I did, no matter how successful or responsible I was, they would always see me as the child who was supposed to make things easier for everyone else. The one who didn't get a seat at the table, literally or figuratively. I told them I was leaving. My mom looked shocked, then angry. She said I was being dramatic and selfish, that I was ruining a special night. My dad told me to sit down and stop embarrassing them. My siblings stared, wide-eyed, as if they couldn't believe I was actually standing up for myself. I walked back to the children's table, picked up my jacket, and left the restaurant without saying goodbye to anyone. As I stepped outside into the cool night air, my hands were shaking, but I also felt something else. Relief. For the first time in a long time, I hadn't swallowed my feelings. I hadn't stayed quiet to keep the peace. That night, my phone blew up with messages. My mom accused me of overreacting. My dad said I owed everyone an apology. My siblings sent a mix of awkward jokes and half-hearted, "Are you okay?" texts. I didn't respond. I needed time to think, to process what had happened and what it meant for my relationship with my family. So that's where things stood. I had walked out of a fancy family dinner, humiliated and hurt, but also strangely empowered. I knew that whatever I did next was going to change things, one way or another. Before I tell you what happened after that night, and the choice I eventually made that shocked my entire family, I want you to really think about this. If you were in my position, if your own family invited you to a formal celebration, only to seat you at the kids' table while everyone else was treated like an adult, what would you have done? Would you have stayed quiet to keep the peace, or would you have walked away like I did? Because what happened next is where things really started to spiral. The morning after that dinner, I woke up with that heavy, hollow feeling in my chest, the kind that sits there like a stone and makes it hard to breathe. For a few seconds, I hoped it had all been a nightmare, that I hadn't actually been humiliated in front of strangers by my own family. But then my phone buzzed on the nightstand, lighting up with unread messages, and reality came crashing back in. I lay there staring at the ceiling, replaying every second in my head, wondering if maybe they were right and I really had overreacted. But then I remembered the hostess pointing me to the kids' table, the crayons, the menu with cartoon animals, and the way no one had stood up for me. And that doubt turned into anger all over again. I finally picked up my phone and started reading the messages properly. My mom had sent a long paragraph around midnight, saying she was deeply hurt by my behavior, that the dinner was meant to be a joyful family moment, and that I had made it all about myself. My dad's message was shorter and colder. He said I had embarrassed the family and that my attitude was becoming a problem. My sister sent a message full of laughing emojis, saying, "Come on. It was just a joke, don't be so dramatic." My brother said, "You know how mom is. You should have just let it go." As I read those words, something inside me snapped into focus. Not one of them apologized. Not one of them said, "We're sorry we hurt you." Instead, the narrative was already being rewritten, with me as the villain who ruined everything. And for the first time in my life, instead of immediately trying to fix it, to smooth things over, I felt tired. Bone deep tired. I put my phone down and decided I wasn't going to respond right away. Over the next few days, I kept my distance. I went to work, focused on my routine, and tried to process everything. But it was impossible to ignore the weight of it all. Small memories from my childhood kept surfacing, things I had brushed off back then but now saw in a different light. Like the time my parents forgot to come to my school performance, because my sister had a minor soccer game, or the time I was told to skip my own birthday dinner so my brother could celebrate getting a new job. Each memory felt like another piece of evidence, another reminder that this wasn't just about one dinner. This was a pattern. A week later, my mom called me. I almost didn't answer, but a part of me still hoped, foolishly, that maybe she was calling to apologize. Her tone was calm but strained. She said we needed to talk and suggested we meet for coffee. Against my better judgment, I agreed. I told myself I needed closure, or at least clarity. When we met, she got straight to the point. She said she felt like she was walking on eggshells around me, and that my reaction at the dinner had made her realize how sensitive I'd become. I listened quietly, letting her talk. She explained that the seating arrangement wasn't meant to insult me, that it was just easier to group people based on vibes, and that I should have understood that. When I finally spoke, I told her how humiliating it felt, how small and invisible I had felt sitting at that table. I told her that it wasn't about the chair. It was about what it symbolized. She sighed and said something I will never forget. She said, "You've always taken things too personally. You were such an easy child. We never had to worry about you." In her mind, that was a compliment. But to me, it sounded like a confession. I realized then that being easy had meant being overlooked. Being low maintenance had meant being low priority. I asked her directly why my siblings were treated differently, why they were given support and recognition that I never received. She looked genuinely surprised by the question. She said they needed it more, that I was stronger, that she thought I didn't mind. I told her that I did mind, that I always had, but I never felt like I was allowed to say anything. The conversation ended without any real resolution. She didn't apologize. She just said she hoped I'd get over it, for the sake of the family. After that meeting, something in me shifted permanently. I stopped reaching out. I didn't call, I didn't text. And when family group chats lit up with photos from events I wasn't invited to, I muted them. At first, it hurt. It felt like I was grieving something, not just the relationship I had, but the one I wished I'd had. But slowly, the silence became peaceful. A month later, my sister's engagement party was announced. Big venue, lots of guests, formal dress code. I found out about it through social media. No invitation. That stung, but it also confirmed what I already knew. I wasn't part of their inner circle anymore, if I ever truly had been. And strangely enough, instead of feeling crushed, I felt relieved. I didn't have to put myself in a position to be hurt again. Then came the turning point I never expected. One evening, my dad showed up at my apartment unannounced. I hadn't seen him since the dinner. He looked older somehow, more tired. He said he wanted to talk. We sat in my living room, and for a moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, he told me that things had been tense at home. My mom was upset, my siblings were confused, and my absence had been noticed more than I realized. He said the dinner had been meant as a wake-up call, a way to remind me of my place in the family hierarchy, because they felt I was becoming too independent, too distant. Hearing that made my blood run cold. I asked him if he realized how messed up that sounded. He shrugged and said families have roles, and that mine had always been to support, not to challenge. That was the moment I knew there was no misunderstanding here. This wasn't thoughtlessness. It was control. I told him calmly that I was done being treated like a child, that I deserved respect, and that until they could offer that, I needed space. He looked shocked, then angry. He accused me of being ungrateful, of abandoning my family, of thinking I was better than them. I told him it wasn't about being better. It was about being equal. He left without saying goodbye. In the weeks that followed, I started therapy. I realized how much of my self-worth had been tied to my family's approval, and how damaging that had been. I learned to set boundaries, to say no without guilt, to recognize that love shouldn't come with conditions. Slowly, I began to build a life that felt like mine. I spent more time with friends who valued me, pursued hobbies I'd neglected, and focused on my own happiness. About 6 months after the dinner, my mom reached out again. This time, her message was different. She said she missed me. She said the house felt empty without my presence. She asked if we could try again. I took my time responding. When I did, I told her I was open to rebuilding a relationship, but only if things changed. I laid out clear boundaries. No more disrespect. No more minimizing my feelings. No more treating me like the family doormat. She agreed, at least in words. We started slowly, short calls, neutral topics. No family gatherings at first. It wasn't easy, and it wasn't perfect. There were moments when old patterns tried to resurface, when she'd make a dismissive comment or guilt trip me for pulling away. But this time, I didn't let it slide. I called it out calmly and firmly. And something surprising happened. She listened. Not always gracefully, but she listened. As for my siblings, the relationship remains distant. My sister never apologized. My brother still jokes about the kids' table like it's some funny family story. I don't laugh anymore. I don't engage. I've learned that not everyone is willing or able to see the harm they cause. Looking back now, that dinner was one of the most painful experiences of my life, but it was also a turning point. Being seated at the children's table forced me to confront a truth I'd been avoiding for years. I wasn't being treated unfairly by accident. I was being treated unfairly by design. And once I saw that, I couldn't unsee it. If there's one thing I've learned from all of this, it's that family doesn't get a free pass to disrespect you. Love without respect isn't love, it's control. Walking away wasn't easy, and it came with consequences, but it also came with freedom. Freedom to define my worth on my own terms. So now I want to ask you one last time. After hearing everything, after knowing the full story, do you think I was wrong for walking out of that dinner and setting boundaries with my family? Or do you think it was long overdue? Like this video if you were on my side, subscribe for more real and emotional stories like this, and share your final thoughts on this whole mess in the comments. I read them all. And I'll see you in the next story.